So, before we start with the chapter, it's so fitting, and I'm very glad you're with us, Karen, because this is the first, um, really the first time that we're exposed to the really, I think the quintessential, the most fundamental line in A Course in Miracles, um, which is essentially the sole purpose of the miracle worker, the sole purpose of God's teacher, the sole purpose of the child of God, of Christ, is to accept the atonement for himself, accept the atonement for herself. And so it's repeated. It's one of those lines that's repeated often. And every time, and the more you read it, you sit and say, "Oh, I've read that before. What the heck does this mean?" Um, and it's just, this is one of those timings where I must bring this up because it's just perfectly fitting. Um, in my childhood, I was best friends with my good friend Greg Ally, and we were best friends. I would always be at his house. He would come over. We would build blocks and Legos and all sorts of things. Something happened. I'm not sure what. Seventh grade, and this weird time in our life where we think, I don't know, we essentially become. I lost myself, really. I went in this strange path where um, I kind of backed away from him, and I started climbing the social ladder, this endless, strange middle school social ladder. High school, like, drinking and partying with friends and thinking that that's truth and that's contentment. So I, kind of gave up, this best friend growing up with. And I mean, I've looking since then. I've looked back and understood that this was a mistake, really, a mistake that I'd made, and it impacted him. It impacted myself, yeah, probably equally, and everyone involved. So just before this, I received messages from his mother, essentially saying that how could I do this to her son, and he's still devastated by my actions and my decisions, and you know how could I have done this? And I was certainly taken aback. I didn't expect. I haven't heard from his mother in years. Than to get these messages on Facebook, and A Course in Miracles. This is something that's just such a teaching from A Course in Miracles, because maybe without that framework, or maybe coming at an earlier point in my understanding, this sort of thing would either bring up a guilt, and I would feel incredibly guilty, or I'd become incredibly hostile towards this figure. But neither of those is the correct response. It's all we can do. All we can do, all we have to do, all we can do is accept the atonement for ourselves. Accept this atonement for ourselves, and just understand that the past is not here, and someone can try to force it upon us, but it's not here. And that doesn't mean that of course I apologize for anything that my actions have seemed to do upon anybody. I'm sorry, and please forgive me. Um, but I can't let that impact my peace of mind, because that's just my choice. Um, and so I just, it was actually very healing. I wrote her a bunch of messages saying essentially, that how I just made mistakes, and I was, I prided myself on how many beers I drank in a night, and what kind of existence is that? So it's like I gave up my best friend for this endless pursuit of nonsense. And at least the best I can do is recognize right now that that was a mistake. And the best I can do right now is to share the peace, share peace. It's the only way for us to have it. And so and thank you, Stephanie, for bringing this to our attention and allowing us to discuss this right now.
Perfect. Unbelievably perfect timing.
Yeah, right. So, so with that, uh, do you guys read from that online? Um, I know you have your book, Karen. Do you, Shabana? Do you want the link for the? Okay, you have your book.
Well, my book is upstairs right now. I didn't bring it down today. So I opened up I'll read with you here. Watch with you. Read.
It's in the chat as well.
Okay.
Let's see if somebody else wants to join us. Okay, so we're section 5 of chapter 2, and it is called the function of the miracle worker. So, before miracle workers are ready to undertake their function in this world, it is essential that they fully understand the fear of release. Otherwise, they may unwittingly foster the belief that release is imprisonment, a belief that is already very prevalent. This misperception arises in turn from the belief that harm can be limited to the body. That is because of the underlying fear that the mind can hurt itself. None of these errors is meaningful because the miscreations of the mind do not really exist. This recognition is a far better protective device than any form of level confusion because it introduces correction at the level of the error. It is essential to remember that only the mind can create, and that correction belongs at the thought level. To amplify an earlier statement, spirit is already perfect and therefore does not require correction. The body does not exist except as a learning device for the mind. This learning device is not subject to errors of its own because it cannot create. It is obvious, then, that inducing the mind to give up its miscreations is the only application of creative ability that is truly meaningful. Magic is the mindless or the miscreative use of mind. Physical medications are forms of spells, but if you are afraid to use the mind to heal, you should not attempt to do so. The very fact that you are afraid makes your mind vulnerable to miscreation. You are therefore likely to misunderstand any healing that might occur, and because egocentricity and fear usually occur together, you may be unable to accept the real source of the healing. Under these conditions, it is safer for you to rely temporarily on physical healing devices because you cannot misperceive them as your own creations. As long as your sense of vulnerability persists, you should not attempt to perform miracles. I have already said that miracles are expressions of miracle mindedness, and miracle mindedness means right mindedness. The right minded neither exalt nor depreciate the mind of the miracle worker or the miracle receiver. However, as a correction, the miracle need not await the miracle mindedness of the receiver. In fact, its purpose is to restore him to his right mind. It is essential, however, that the miracle worker be in his right mind, however briefly, or he will be unable to reestablish right mindedness in someone else. The healer who relies on his own readiness is endangering his understanding. You are perfectly safe as long as you are completely unconcerned about your readiness, but maintain a consistent trust in mine. If your miracle working inclinations are not functioning properly, it is always because fear has intruded on your right mindedness and has turned it upside down. All forms of not right mindedness are the results of refusal to accept the atonement for yourself. If you do accept it, the atonement, you are in a position to recognize that those who need healing are simply those who have not realized that right mindedness is healing. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. This means you recognize that mind is the only creative level and that its errors are healed by the atonement. Once you accept this, your mind can only heal. By denying your mind any destructive potential and reinstating its purely constructive powers, You place yourself in a position to undo the level confusion of others. The message you then give to them is the truth that their minds are similarly constructive and their miscreations cannot hurt them. By affirming this, you release the mind from over evaluating its own learning device and restore the mind to its true position as the learner. It should be emphasized again that the body does not learn any more than it creates. As a learning device, it merely follows the learner. But if it is falsely endowed with self initiative, it becomes a serious obstruction to the very learning it should facilitate. Only the mind is capable of illumination. Spirit is already illuminated, and the body in itself is too dense. The mind, however, can bring its illumination to the body by recognizing that it is not the learner and is therefore unamenable to learning. The body is, however, easily brought into alignment with a mind that has learned to look beyond it toward the light. Corrective learning always begins with the awakening of spirit and the turning away from the belief in physical sight. This often entails fear because you are afraid of what your spiritual sight will show you. I said before that the Holy Spirit cannot see error and is capable only of looking beyond it in the defense of atonement. There is no doubt that this may produce discomfort, yet the discomfort is not the final outcome of perception. When the Holy Spirit is permitted to look upon the defilements of the altar, he also looks immediately towards the atonement. Nothing he perceives can induce fear. Everything that results from spiritual awareness is merely channelized toward correction. Discomfort is aroused only to bring the need for a correction into awareness. The fear of healing arises in the end from an unwillingness to accept unequivocally that healing is necessary. What the physical eye sees is not corrective, nor can error be corrected by any device that can be seen physically. As long as you believe in what your physical sight tells you, your attempts at correction will be misdirected. The real vision is obscured because you cannot endure to see your own defiled altar. But since the altar has been defiled, your state becomes doubly dangerous unless it is perceived. Healing is an ability that developed after the separation, before which it was unnecessary. Like all aspects of the belief in space and time, it is temporary. However, as long as time persists, healing is needed as a means of protection. This is because healing rests on charity, and charity is a way of perceiving the perfection of others, even if you cannot perceive it in yourself. Most of the loftier concepts of which you are now capable are time dependent. Charity is really a weaker reflection of a much more powerful love encompassment that is far beyond any form of charity you can conceive of as yet. Charity is essential to right mindedness in the limited sense in which it can now be attained. Charity is a way of looking at another as if he had already gone far beyond his actual accomplishments in time. Since his own thinking is faulty, he cannot see the atonement for himself, or he would have no need of charity. The charity that is accorded him is both an acknowledgement that he needs help and a recognition that he will accept it. Both of these perceptions clearly imply their dependence on time, making it apparent that charity still lies within the limitations of this world. I said before that only revelation transcends time. The miracle, as an expression of charity, can only shorten it. It must be understood, however, that whenever you offer a miracle to another, you are shortening the suffering of both of you. This corrects retroactively as well as progressively. So there's a lot going on here.
Would you please address the term miscreation?
Miscreation. Yes.
That really threw me.
This. So let's actually look at the text, and where I'm pretty sure it says that miscreations of the mind are not real. Um,
Yep. They do not really exist.
yes. I would
So
say
what in the world does that mean?
um, miscreations of the mind. I think it's almost a misnomer because I think misperception may be a better way to put it.
That works.
Because miscreation is kind of implying that it is created in the first place.
Wrongly. Created wrongly.
Yes. But it says that, but we're told that it does not exist.
We're told that creation is of spirit and that there's
Creation is
nothing
of
wrong
mind.
about that.
Creation is of mind. What section was that you pulled that? What paragraph?
First one.
His creations do not. Oh yes, none of these errors is meaningful because I love the blunt way that it puts it. Like none of these errors is meaningful because
Because they don't really exist. So it's like seemingly miscreations, like things that our mind is telling us aren't real.
Things. I think it's
That's not right.
things that we are perceiving that we're almost forcing to be real, like guilt. Guilt is a miscreation of the mind.
Or deservedness.
Deservedness in what way? Like somebody deserved what?
Yeah. I mean,
like karma in that sense, almost like.
no, like I work hard, so I deserve to make more money, for instance.
Maybe that seems like a neutral thing.
I
Okay.
think it's entitlement she's talking about. Is that
Entitlement?
entitlement?
Maybe.
Maybe in a sense, if we're talking about in a special way, as like I deserve it more than anybody else.
Oh, that's different.
Because I am special. That's a miscreation of the mind.
Right.
Misperception, really, I think, is it better.
So miscreation showing up 3 times, twice in the first graph and once in the second. Oh, 4 times it says.
And miscreative is in that second paragraph. Miscreation.
It's obvious then that inducing the mind to give up its miscreations is the only application of creative ability that's truly meaningful. So that's funny. The very fact that you are afraid makes your mind vulnerable to miscreation. There we go.
Yeah.
That's making it be a real thing.
Yeah.
I'm afraid. I'm thinking thoughts that are miscreations, but they don't really exist.
Well, think about it. Fear, if we understand that fear, so typically we're presented this dichotomy of there's love and then there's fear. But fear is really the absence of love. Fear is, sorry, my internet. Fear is not a thing in itself. It's just the absence of love. It's lack of love. It's not, it doesn't exist because it's a lack of love. It's nothing. Internet. Let me plug in the connection.
Monitors, internet.
I just had my Wi-Fi fixed for the first time in months. So I was testing the Wi-Fi, but it seems that Ethernet still old trusty.
It's just funny to keep talking about it when the first instance of it says they don't really exist, but they're talking about them anyway.
Miscreations?
So, yeah.
Well, okay. Get back. I think the root of it, I think, is the best way to put it, because fear is not something in itself. Fear is a lack of love, or really, more properly, the belief that there can be lack in love.
Yeah.
That mistake. So the very fact that you are afraid, the very fact that you are coming from a place of lack makes our mind vulnerable to miscreation, to perceiving lack. That's all miscreation is, a perception of lack. So we're coming from this place of lack, and that makes us miscreate. It makes us misperceive. And in that state, I forget what week it was, but we said that the mistakes, misperceptions are really not creating anything. We're not extending anything. We're just stagnant. So a misperception, miscreation, really just, I think it just means stagnant and focused on lack, bringing about lack because we're focused upon it.
But a lot of experiences seem to show up as a result of these miscreations or wrong perceptions.
Opportunities to atone for them?
They are opportunities to atone for them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Usually uncomfortable.
Well, let's get back to comfort. Okay. Paragraph 8. I believe it's paragraph 8. And by the way, hello, and Breton, you're welcome to come on camera and unmute yourself to join the discussion, but you're also welcome to stay as you are. I think in paragraph 8. Oh, okay, paragraph 7. Okay. So looking upon this defiled altar, the last sentence, discomfort. When we look within, we see our altar is defiled. In other words, we've taken these false gods, if you will. We've put our trust in material substance or special relationships or circumstance. When we look within and at the inner altar and really use to see the inner altar, we use spiritual sight. So the spiritual eye has nothing to do with physical vision. When we look within, typically when we cut off our physical senses and look within with our spiritual eye at the inner altar, discomfort is aroused only to bring the need for correction into awareness. So we're told that Holy Spirit sees that the altar is defiled while simultaneously, immediately looking at the correction. So that discomfort is brought to us, but we need not dwell upon it. It's brought to us just so that we can see that, just so that our attention can be directed towards the solution.
Right. Good to remember.
In fact, they can be discomforting.
But good to remember that, not to get all invested.
Oh, sure.
Place a lot of importance on that, which is creating the discomfort, and then try to fix it, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera.
Or we don't have to we don't have to try, or we don't have to fix anything if we accept the atonement for ourselves. That's what we're told. Paragraph 5. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. There's no beating around the bush here. The sole responsibility. There's no other responsibility. The only job we have.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Paragraph 5.
Sole responsibility. Oh.
Our only responsibility. It's not saying in this circumstance, this is it, and under this no. Period. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. That's a bold statement that's repeated verbatim throughout the text. And it's not circumstantial because atonement lies at the end of time. It has nothing to do with time. It has nothing to do with circumstance and space where we are. It's a state of mind that we accept now. And that's our only responsibility. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to do anything with others. We don't have to do, recite or preach. Our only job, the only thing we are called to do, accept the atonement for ourselves.
So looking at that and putting it up next to your story, what would be the purpose of saying I'm sorry? You said, of course I would do that. Like Stephanie, she reached out and clearly she's upset and her son's still upset all these years later, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious. Hi, Britain.
It's Nadia. Sorry.
Nadia.
Hi,
Nadia.
Nadia. Nice to see you. We've been
Nice to
chatting
see
on
you
Facebook
too.
for a while.
Yes. Nice to
Yay.
see you. Thanks, Tim.
I hope your daughter is bathed.
Yes. Nice and showered. Sorry that I'm late.
Right
Continue.
on time.
I'm listening. Yeah. Thank you.
Right on time.
Thank you.
So I think clearly there's a place for I'm sorry. It's saying I'm sorry doesn't necessarily mean that I am wrong. I'm sorry for the way that you feel about this. I'm sorry that my actions have led you to feel that way. It's just unfortunate. I'm sorry for that, of course.
You know what's funny about that is I love the way you just stated that. That really just went deep in my heart. Like, yeah, of course, that is what the I'm sorry is for. But culturally speaking, here in the United States anyway, or at least in my little world, it's funny that people, like if I were to say I'm sorry to somebody because they thought I did something wrong, right? And then I'm saying sorry and I say it with that kind of language, I'm really sorry that what I did made you feel this way. It's not really what they're after. What they're really after is for me to, I've had this experience, is for me to say, I messed up. That
Yeah.
what I did was wrong. And I am sorry I did it. Right? It's kind of a funny thing. But that kind of an I'm sorry doesn't really fit with me with all of what we're reading here. That kind of I'm sorry.
Which
that,
kind of doesn't fit?
that I did something wrong.
Oh.
Because there's only
Sure.
one error.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, I am saying that what I did hurt your feelings, and I am so sorry for that. But that's very different than, it was all my fault, and right?
Because, I mean, think about it. Coming from this understanding, I would never say you are wrong. So why would I say I am wrong? It's the same thing. Who are we to know right or wrong, really? But we can, I think I understand, and maybe there's a tendency to demand an apology, because then once you get apology, then all of a sudden it's that false forgiveness. It's that illusory forgiveness where this person, you know what? That person did something to me. But you know what? I'm going to forgive them because I'm going to take the moral high ground. I forgive them for doing that thing to me. That's not forgiveness. That's not forgiveness, because then we still have the belief that person did something wrong to me. So that's not forgiveness. That's the false forgiveness. That's what we're
Azim always said that his forgiveness of Tony was for himself.
Sure.
To heal his own resentment, his own anger, his own whatever emotions he had. He was very clear about that. The forgiveness was for himself. And Tony's I'm sorry to Azim, hopefully that was also for himself. I think Azim probably was a perfect person for Tony to be apologizing to. This is a story where Tony shot and killed Azim's son. So there was an I'm sorry, and there was the forgiveness going in those two directions between those two people.
Now, on all these lines, let's sit with this, because this is important. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. Is not to accept the atonement for anybody else. So what does that actually mean? To accept the atonement for ourself. It's not to accept the atonement. It's to accept the atonement for ourself. What can that mean but self-forgiveness? We cannot forgive anybody else, because forgiving anybody else implies that they have done something to deserve forgiving. So accepting the atonement for ourselves, as I understand it, is to forgive ourselves our misperceptions of the past, our misperceptions of anybody else that we have taken as the reason for our peace being gone here now. That person did something to me, and that's why I'm not at peace now. We forgive ourselves that misperception. Ah, that's a mistake. I forgive myself for thinking that in the first place because it was just a mistake. That person didn't do anything to me, nor can they. I forgive myself my misperception of that.
And also, was your friend's name Greg?
Yes,
You couldn't do anything to Greg.
exactly. Yes.
Not really.
And you know, in reality, sure, and I can't do anything beyond myself. But clearly there's a way of, you know, it was just a call for love. We're told that their actions either stem from love or stem from a call for love. So clearly I was coming from a place of calling for love because it was not a place of love. And so there is a distinction. I was calling for love. So I was therefore not sharing love.
Yeah.
So I was not sharing love with Greg in that moment.
Because you were seeking it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's so, thank you for sharing that story. It's so meaningful and with the context of this chapter.
It's there's certain things that are just you just understand are not a coincidence. 20 minutes before our Course in Miracles discussion is it's just a golden opportunity to accept the atonement for myself while we're discussing that. So I thank Stephanie for sending me that message because that's awesome. Just
Yeah.
divine timing. There's a lot now. I mean, that being said, now in my text, that sentence, the whole thing is italicized. The sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. Meaning that whole thing is pretty much emphasized as important. And so I guess I see this text, all of these words are in place to make us understand what that means, what that one sentence means. What does it mean to accept the atonement for ourselves? That's the job of this text. So this is like an explanation of what is the atonement. How can we accept it for ourselves?
Maybe this is just a stab in the dark because I haven't read the whole thing, but maybe even to give us confidence that we actually can do this, or that we ought to want to do this.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely. There's a section in the text that says, "You can do anything I ask." That's the voice of Christ saying that. Why would I ask it of you if you can't do it? Essentially, you can do anything I ask. So yes, and it's, I've heard people say that, oh, it's, of Course in Miracles, it's the core message is forgiveness, right? And it's like, yeah, kind of, but we have to undefine what we've been taught is forgiveness to understand what that means.
That's exactly right. It is about forgiveness, but not as most understand.
Yes.
What apology is, what forgiveness is, what love is, even.
Exactly.
Right. Self-love.
Yeah.
My understanding of this story, Tim, is that Stephanie and Greg, are feeling the effects of judging you, and their peace is gone. So they're pinning it on you. And your perspective, because of this atonement here, is to do the colloquial, my bad.
Yes. Essentially. Yeah. Well, yes. Now this is tricky to talk about because anything that we say about another is really a statement of ourself. So I can't say anything about Stephanie or Greg really, but I do know that I do know when if I were to be in a state of lack of peace, it is all my doing, and sometimes we fall in the trap of blaming something that is not ourself, and but in so doing we're choosing to remain in that state of lack of peace. So it's almost like we're proving to ourselves that we are in this state of lack of peace and that it's possible. I'm choosing, so I'm in this, we choose to be in this state of lack, and it's because of that. And look, my proof. That's my proof that I have no peace right now, and I can't even choose peace because of that. But it's it's still a choice. Still a choice. But all we can do is accept the atonement for ourselves. And in order to have peace, we share it. Getting back to what you were saying, Karen, of what we want in the first place, really. Why do we want this? Why is this uh, tool of mind, why is this mental tool something that I want? And later on, I'm not sure how far, maybe chapter 7, we're told essentially these 3 steps of I think we discussed this last week of 3 steps to, I don't know, being in peace. I think it is. The first step is to recognize in order to have, we must give. In order to have all, we must give all to all. It's like ideas. In order to really when I have an idea and I want to strengthen it, I share it with everybody. Then the idea is strengthened. Other people hold the idea, and my concept of the idea is strengthened, validated, or just constructed in a better way. It's the first step. The second step is, in order to have peace, we must share it. So the first step is telling us just a basic law of reality. In order to have something, we must give it. We must share it. We must extend. The second step is to understand what it is we want to extend. What do we want? Peace. What more do we want? Peace is what we want, all of us. That's what we all want. That's what a lot of people strive to have peace. I'll have peace when I get that. I'll have peace when I get this promotion, or when I get that thing in my garage, or that circumstance, when I get this person in my life, then I'll have peace. But it's all to have peace. But peace is a choice now. And the only way that we can have it is to give it, is to share our peace. So we make things complicated by thinking that there are so many things to choose from. But there's one. There's peace. We can call it peace. We can call it love, truth, or lack of that. It's one choice. They're all the same. And we choose that, or we choose lack of that. we choose lack of that when we say, I will have peace when I get this. When I get this, I will have peace. We're implying in that statement, whether we say it or whether we think it, it could be a driving motivation in our everyday life. If we're thinking, if we're driven by the thought that, you know, I'm working towards that because that is what I want, so much so that that will make this better. That will make here now better. We're implying that here now is not good. We're implying when we say, when I have that, I'll be at peace, we're implying I'm not at peace here now. So we all want peace. Peace, I just think, is the best word for it. This inner deep contentment, this deep understanding of who we are, this deep connection with all that's around us. That's all we want. And we don't need technology for that. We don't need to get anything or do anything. We just share it. We accept the atonement for ourselves. And what does that mean? We share all that's just within us. We share our light and we just make our light stronger. We get the peace. We have the peace. We are the peace. It's here now. And so the third step, that's the second step, to understand that what we want is peace. The third step is to be vigilant for God and God's kingdom. Be vigilant for this. What we know that is true, that peace, yes, I stand here in peace. Anything can be going around outside of seemingly outside of myself. People can be doing all sorts of things. You know, it could be violent, anything can be going around, but we can still choose to be at peace. And to be vigilant with that peace. It's a seemingly contradiction in terms, to be vigilant for peace. But we stand up for peace and we just don't acknowledge anything else. That's what it means. We support peace. I like to think of it, it's kind of like, I've been thinking, you know, the divine feminine is the way, it's this beautiful, it's the existence. It's the beauty and existence. It's a state of being. I see that as the feminine, as this divine feminine. And it's just given, it's just here for us, just shining. And then the divine masculine is saying, hey guys, check this out. This is pretty cool. Hey, check out what this state of being is like, because this is awesome. It's this call. It's this, like, you know, hey, check it out. Look at this. Come here. But still maintain, it's like that balance between, you know, drawing attention to it and just being it. I think that's the vigilance, understanding, you know, when we want peace, you know, being at peace, that's the feminine. Being vigilant for the peace is the masculine. And it's not vigilant in the sense of demanding change. It's not forcing change. It's not seeing change as necessary in anybody. It's extending our peace. I'm going to bless you whether you like it or not. You know, I love you whether you like it or not. You can think that I don't, but it's true. That's I think the vigilance. But I digress. That's what we're working towards. There's a lot more in this section too. We also get back to this whole idea of level confusion, which we've touched upon a few times by now. As with other things, you know, I think this is something that helps also. In paragraph 6, sentence 3. Let's see. So we're talking about body, mind, this whole body, mind, spirits. You know, I think traditionally it's presented as like these are 3 aspects of who we are. But A Course in Miracles has a different way of understanding these things, these concepts. So only the mind is capable of illumination. Spirit is already illuminated, and the body itself is too dense. The mind, however, can bring its illumination to the body by recognizing that it is not the learner and is therefore unamenable to learning. The body is, however, easily brought into alignment with a mind that has learned to look beyond it toward the light. So, am I pronouncing that right, Karen? Unamenable? You may know this. Okay. Um, so essentially, we're told in these couple passages, these couple paragraphs, that body is just a learning device for the mind. It's not who we are. It's a product of mind. It's a learning device, and it's like a classroom. The classroom itself is designed for us to move beyond the classroom. If we're perpetually in the classroom, that means that the classroom is not serving its purpose. Same thing with the body. It's designed to make us see through it, look beyond it toward the light.
I keep thinking of the word drive. It just like my brain won't let go of it for the last 5 minutes or so. Like personal drive to achieve. Whether it's baking blueberry muffins and just the drive to this next batch is going to be even more something simple like that, or the drive to work harder, more efficiently, to be able to maybe make more money, like just drive,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking that drive is all about the body, maybe. It's certainly not the same thing as being vigilant for peace. It's a something different, and I don't really have the words for what I'm feeling. It keeps coming up.
So I forget our brother's name. Somebody from Conscious Business, one of the programs that we offer. What's his name? Bald guy. He says that there's a difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation is typically what we're told in work settings, but it's fear driven, really. It's do this in order to get this, or do this or else. But inspiration is just being inspired just because. And
very different.
I think that kind of relates to what you're saying, but I think more importantly, that drive, some people don't have it. And that drive, some people have it, but it's just going in a strange direction. Some people just have a drive to just keep going in circles.
Or like your drive to climb that social ladder, right?
Yes. It's a drive, and it could be completely misguided. It's a tool. I'd say it's one of these tools that are like the body. Atonement is the only defense that's not double-edged, that we can't use against ourselves. Body is neutral, so it's we can use it for good or bad because it's in itself is neutral. Drive, I think, is a neutral thing.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
I'm just so sorry, Karen. This is a question for you. I think ego is driven, and drive might possibly be the natural desire or the natural ability to evolve. That we're inherently upwardly mobile in a creative or other way.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I like that, Shabana, because I think the important thing about that is that it's an upward direction. But what that means, what that's implying, is that there's a place better than here. So the drive may be rooted in a sense of it's better than here.
Maybe not better though, maybe just more.
But what's the difference?
I don't know, because Barbara, she spoke a lot about that evolutionary impulse, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, picture what I drive. Maybe I think what we're talking about is we should make a distinction. Drive may be the ego version of calling. Spirit, I think, has a calling, and it has that same power to it. You just have a calling to make the muffins.
Just to bring more pleasure in that example, right? Even more pleasure, right?
Fully. We can't have more pleasure than we can't be more joyous than fully joyous. And that's just what you're called. That's how you're called to share this full joy with. You're just called to do that. Whereas maybe, I don't know, maybe a drive is
Maybe the drive is the ego thing.
Bring the numbers up, we need to double this because we need to double it. It just needs to be bigger.
We need to go faster. We need to, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. The word just wouldn't let go of me. So I brought it up.
I think it's,
she should have atoned for it.
For making the muffins.
for making muffins, or for the drive, not letting go of the word drive.
Well, you were possessed by it.
Who's the funny one, Shabana?
Yeah, right. Shabana showed up today. So in A Course in Miracles, when it was being written, there wasn't these nuanced verbiages, these nuanced dichotomies like make and create. They kind of evolved into their place. So in the beginning, maybe not of the edited version, but the unedited version, make and create are essentially used interchangeably.
Oh.
So, but there came a point where, in Helen's understanding, that there is a dichotomy, there's a distinction between make and create. And after that point, that structure was in place. So I think there's this dichotomy, there's this juxtaposition of drive and calling, perhaps. Or I don't know if there's a better better way to
impulse.
Distinction. Impulse. Like a spiritual, it's a spiritual, essentially listening. What we're getting at is listening to spirit, right? Being in spirit.
More and more and more and more.
Fully.
Yeah. Fully.
Wait, so is it fully and completely until we are, until what? Like to what end?
Are you asking what is the end of, what is completion? That's the atonement. The atonement, we're told previously, sits at time's end. The atonement is a principle that is completed at the end of time. Once we all accept the atonement, once this entire existence accepts the atonement for ourself, each part accepts it for ourself. Once that is all, we're all in agreement, that's the end of time.
Oh.
So really, in order to bring that more quickly, because we're in the framework of time,
Right.
we accept the atonement for ourselves. Atonement is the final miracle.
And then there's no need for time, because time is here for the learning.
Yes.
Learning device, right.
The learning device, yep.
Right.
We're out of the classroom, so to speak. Once the atonement is accepted, there's no need, because this framework from which we're operating in the physical world. Now, clearly, we're not bodies. We're not sets of histories. We're not a profile, on a social media.
Mm-hmm.
We are the mind controlling it.
Mm-hmm.
But when we operate within this framework, there's a spatial distance between us. It's the embodiment of separation. That's what the physical world is. Space, space being in space implies that we can be separate. Being in time means that there can be some place that is not here now. That can be, I don't know, another time. So it's the embodiment of separation, of not being present, of not being at peace. So clearly, when we understand that that's not necessary, we walk out of the classroom. The atonement sits at the end of time.
And if we believe in physical sight, which when we use physical sight, we see separation. There you are. There's 4 unique faces there, right? That's physical sight. And when we rely on that and believe in that, now we can use it, right? It's part of the learning. But it's the spiritual sight that's really true.
Yes. So we're told that the physical world is a tool for us to communicate. That's its only being in spirit, accepting the atonement for ourselves. What that means is that we use the physical world only as a way to communicate within it. That's its only purpose. It's not to see anything or hear anything. It's designed, we're here to communicate with others.
What is spiritual sight? I know this isn't in the chapter. I'm sorry. I'm kind of going off on a tangent.
So that is in the chapter. It's
okay. Oh, good.
So in paragraph 7. So corrective learning always begins with the awakening of spirit and the turning away from the belief in physical sight.
That's funny. I highlighted it.
That's really funny.
Oh my goodness.
So much for physical sight.
Mine's obviously not working. Sorry to interrupt you, Tim.
We're contributing. We have to understand we're each a critical component of this. So there's no interrupting. There's just extending. We're all here extending this truth. And spiritual sight clearly has nothing to do with physical sight. Physical sight is just a way for us to communicate this. We're using the physical world to say spiritual sight. It's kind of like when you see something, it's a way of communication. It's one way, in which we use the physical world to communicate. We say, okay, what is spiritual sight? Think about it this way. It's like when you look at something, but it has nothing to do with the eyes. It has nothing to do with any of our senses. So really meditative practices, typically we close our eyes, we sit either with a droning tone, there's nothing going on, we're sitting comfortably, closing off our senses. That's what allows us to tune in to the spiritual sight.
There can also be unconditional observation. Unconditional observation. So say I'm just observing the apple tree. I'm just really looking with physical sight at the apple tree, but not labeling it, not putting other language to it, just really kind of communing with it, right?
I think communing with it, you're sitting there with the tree, looking with your eyes, but there's a deeper connection.
Yeah.
That is being felt, and maybe looking with it allows us to focus on that more fully.
I only say that because I personally don't want to get into the trap of thinking that eyes have to be closed.
Sure. Oh, of
right.
Of course. Of course.
That was just a reminder to me.
Yes. Reminder to all of us, because I mean, there's a certain truth in that meditative practices, and clearly you don't have to sit in silence either. You can have a song playing, but they typically shut off our senses in the way that we're not analyzing, we're not thinking about our perceptions, or what we're seeing or what we're hearing. It's kind of just in the background, or just like zoning out. And so that's spiritual sight.
Mm.
That it's a way for us to connect, to be in truth, and sit there. And Marianne Williamson always says, what is it? Be radically self-aware, maybe. I don't know what she says. But just to be objectively to be able to sit within, and whatever we're receiving, whatever we're being told, to understand it, and also to live it when we're in that zone of joy, when we're in that place of joy, when we're in spirit, and we can be shown, just it's a revelation. So I'm not sure if we discussed revelation here yet, but miracles are in time. Miracles are the love shared amongst ourselves. Miracles are designed to induce revelation. So miracles carry out in time. Revelation is timeless. It just happens like this. It's the spark of insight. It's that flash that's timeless, that we're just given. We're shown, not physically. Our spiritual eye is shown something. So the miracle, maybe it's just saying these words, allow us to understand just completely in no time. It has nothing to do with time, because it's direct communication from God, from Holy Spirit. And so when we have that revelation, sometimes it induces discomfort, because we're called to do something that is outside our comfort zone. We're called to make a change in maybe the way that we're perceiving, or we're in a lifestyle that's not conducive to what we're being shown. It can be discomforting, but it's only in place so that we can understand that there's a solution in place.
Atonement.
The atonement, yes. Forgive ourselves, and forgive ourselves for doing these things which we now understand are not in our best interest. Dwell on it, or how did I do this? We forgive ourselves.
Past doesn't exist.
Right.
It's all
Not here.
It's all past tense.
Right.
I love that from Esther Hicks. It's all past tense.
Yeah.
I am really fond of the very last sentence in chapter 10.
Chapter 10?
Paragraph 10, sorry.
Okay. Oh, yes. This corrects retroactively as well as progressively.
Like, who cares about time? Going both ways, and, up and down. Like, we're vibrating a new paradigm, really. That everything is perfect. You're perfect, I'm perfect. And there's joy in that.
Here now. Where else can joy be but here now?
I certainly experienced it as I started forgiving myself.
Excellent. Because you know why? When we forgive ourselves, we naturally forgive everybody else. Why would I forgive? If I forgive myself for everything, then I naturally share that with everybody. Somebody does something, they mess up. You messed up. It's okay. And clearly, we this is operating in the framework where nobody can do anything for us. We can only forgive ourselves. But even from somebody, they didn't call me back. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, how many times have I done that? I forgive myself. I forgive this person. It translates. When we don't forgive ourselves, then we're operating. That's the root. That's the root of all our actions. That's why it's so important for us to accept the atonement for ourselves. That's the place from which we extend. So if we don't forgive ourselves, then we won't forgive others. It's not the other way around. It's not the other way around. We don't have to forgive others in order to forgive ourselves. It starts with the self. And a lot of times I think people may not understand the ways in which they're not forgiving themselves. But then that is always in place. That's the root from which we interact and share our existence.
I have to present a speech at my daughter's wedding next
Yay.
week.
When is it?
On Saturday. She's getting
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I live in Calgary, Alberta, and so I'm flying to Los Angeles, and then going further to a citrus ranch that her father-in-law owns.
Ooh.
But I got very, very busy forgiving myself and every one of my siblings and everyone that's going to be there. And it amazed me how much joy I felt. Like I was blessing everyone.
Yes.
And I've never experienced that kind of joy ever.
Good.
So, and you know, like I was going to make a few jokes, and there's no need to, because I'm the joke, you know.
Oh my gosh. I mean, is that a revelation when you realize that about yourself?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, it's such a revelation, this thing that's revealed, like, oh, I'm the joke. Or like, it was me, it was always me. Right?
Wait, is that a revelation or the holy instance?
I don't know. I was kind of making a joke there.
Oh.
I don't know.
It's a good one.
I just play with words all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure in this context what the revelation is. The revelation.
I don't know. That's why I'm here.
There was a revelation. And Shabana is sharing the revelation with us in words, you know, to try and communicate. And I think we understand, but really she understands fully. But that is being in the holy instant.
Ah.
Which we have not yet gotten to.
Nice bridge work, Tim.
Set it up. It's like a softball. I'm just.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. I have to bring this up because this is something that I would just love to share with everybody. Shabana had brought up that the last sentence of that, this corrects retroactively as well as progressively. So there was a study in 2001. This is a scientific study. Okay, 3,300 patients who had developed blood infections at some medical center. Essentially were brought to this. I think he was a preacher or a minister, and he was essentially asked to pray for either all of them or half of them. It was a study, so I assume he prayed for half of them. The other half were not prayed for. So as a result so it's a random groups. He prayed for however many. They found it's science, statistically significant that those who he prayed for had a lower mortality rate. I think it was. Yeah, there was a significantly lower mortality rate in his group that he prayed for. So his prayers healed them. Now that's cool in itself. The real wild thing about this study is that this was conducted in 2001. He prayed for them in 2000, right? So he prayed for them in 2000. The patients were in the hospital in 1990 to 1996. So his prayers actually healed people who had already checked out of the hospital in the past. His prayers healed people 10 years ago. And it's called retroactive intercessory prayer. And this is a link to it on Wikipedia. And it's one of those things that's just like, well, I thought we kind of understood time, but not really. Prayer can heal. I think we all understand that prayer can heal.
Are you saying that when the people left the hospital in the late 90s, they weren't healed, but then he prayed in the 2000 whenever? I don't quite get it.
I don't know how it actually happened, to be honest, but the records show that those whom he prayed for had a significantly lower mortality rate. So I don't know if somehow the past
okay. Yeah, this is a time smush thing.
I don't know if the past was changed somehow. I don't know if this was always in the plan that he was going to pray for them, but there was a scientifically significant thing that he prayed for people. I'm not sure if he knew that they were in the past. But he healed them.
Yeah, I'm going to read that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the atonement, yes, corrects retroactively as well as progressively.
Well, it's so interesting. I mean, I am so in this box of time, right? That it exists, that it's real, that things go from here to then, from now to then, and that, forward. But it doesn't, nothing that is a perception has to be so. It doesn't mean it's so. It doesn't mean it's real. And it certainly helps me, get somewhere on time when somebody else is waiting for me and that kind of thing. But it's just not as real as we think it is.
It's not as rigid as we think it is.
It's not as yeah, it's not the thing we think it is. It's a tool versus it being a reality or something like that.
A law, perhaps.
A law, yeah.
And one part of the text we're told, essentially, ego operates from the past. Ego says, this is what happened in the past, and therefore this is what will happen in the future. Completely overlooking the present. So ego says, there's the past, and so that's what's going to happen in the future. It doesn't see the present. It doesn't want to see the present. Because in this framework of time, that's where the ego exists. That's where you can prove its existence. I was in the past, and so I will be in the future. And we lose sight of now.
Yeah, that's what I heard you just say. Ego bypasses now.
Yes.
Huh. It's a now bypass.
It is.
That spiritual bypass people talk about.
Like that, ego. Yeah, good. That's a great definition for ego.
It's a now bypass.
It's a bypass of now.
Yeah. Wow. I never thought about it that way. Huh. Yeah.
That's going to be a Facebook post, Tim.
Yes. Okay. What must it say verbatim? Ego is a bypass.
Ego is a now bypass.
Is it bypass?
Because they say spiritual bypass. Something is a spiritual bypass, right?
Oh.
That's a common term in whatever.
What does it mean?
Spiritual bypass? It means that you think you're acting within the parameters of spirituality, but it might not be that. It might be defense mechanism, or it might be some kind of dissociation from what have you. They call it a spiritual bypass when you use spirituality to bypass something that's really going on. So I guess that's different. That's different because ego's not using now.
Is that in reference to, say, politics? People who are apolitical on spiritual grounds?
I'm trying to think where I hear it. I hear it more in like the conversations that have to do with healing work, and I'll have to get more specific. I'm not explaining it well. But,
can you give any example at all? I'd be very grateful for that.
You muted yourself, Karen. I think she's looking.
I turned myself on mute because I have a clickety-clack keyboard. I was just going to do a quick search, see if I could find an example.
Okay. Ego is a now bypass. Ego is a bypass of now. Really, it's a perceived bypass of now. We are here now and we don't have a choice.
Okay, here's something from Psychology Today. There are so many promises out there. This path or that practice will allow you to live in a perpetual state of bliss, achieve your goals, become rich and thin. Who doesn't want that? Blah-de-blah. We're now spiritually distracting ourselves from our feelings, thinking that we're walking a healthy spiritual path because we're not doing drugs, we're not doing alcohol, but we're totally into the self-help books and meditation and yoga. And they're saying that we've gotten progressively more skillful in our methods to try to feel endlessly good. And this experience is called spiritual bypass. It's a defense mechanism. The defense looks prettier than other defenses, but it serves the same purpose. It shields us from the truth. It disconnects us from our feelings, and it helps us avoid the big picture.
So essentially, is an example, meditating or like doing affirmations in order to attain material substance?
It could be that. Here's a paragraph. It says the shorthand for spiritual bypass is grasping rather than gratitude, arriving rather than being, avoiding rather than accepting. It's spiritual practice in the service of repression, usually because we can't tolerate what we're feeling or think we shouldn't be experiencing what we're feeling.
Oh, guilty. Yeah, totally experienced that. Spiritual bypass, for sure.
Yeah, for me, it's distractions, like listening to radio.
I listen to like Super Soul Sunday to distract. For me, it's spiritual. But what I'm really doing is like not honoring the truth or looking into the deeper stuff. I do that sometimes.
It's okay. It's all right that you do that.
Thank you.
It's no need for guilt. Guilt is a miscreation of the mind.
I know.
It's okay.
Thank you.
It's about what we do with spiritual practices rather than the spiritual practices themselves. It's like why are we engaged in them? It's like I was listening to a coworker recently, and the person was quite anti things like alcohol and drugs and smoking, and very pro meditation and communing with nature and those kinds of things. And that does make sense on the surface. But I walked away feeling like a person can easily use spiritual practice as in a similar way as one uses drugs or alcohol or cigarettes or anything else. Drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, to me, they're not a problem in and of themselves. It's why we're utilizing them. What are we trying to achieve? And I feel like sometimes when I listen to people, I feel like, oh, wow, they're doing that same thing with spiritual practice.
Right.
I mean, I don't know for sure what any individual's doing. I hear the potential, the possibility of that same thing happening.
Judging.
Yes.
Dodging?
Judging.
No, judging, rationalizing their superiority.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like this. Like, it's like judging somebody for being judgmental. You know, it's like that hypocrisy.
Right.
You better not be judgmental. It's like, you know, by saying that we're judgmental.
Oh, right. You're judging.
Yeah.
I do that constantly.
Oh, it's all right. It's okay.
Oh my gosh. We're
Well,
never going to get there. Just kidding.
That's right, because we're here now.
Nadia.
We're here now. There's nowhere to get.
I know.
Nowhere
get.
to be.
And I think if we're using spiritual practice to get somewhere, to be better, to improve the world, right? Then we're coming from a place of lack.
Yes.
Right there. It's
Yes.
it's such a fine line.
It is. But it must be, you know, this image comes in A Course in Miracles where the ego and Holy Spirit, all these, you know, make and create, all these, you know, seemingly opposites are brought together. Because when they're apart, we can see the value and say, oh, we can choose both. We can have both. You know, I can be material and also then spiritual. No, but then we bring them both together. And once they're together, we can see really what's true.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's so subtle, but that just means we're right on truth, right there.
Right there. Oh, right there.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a nuance. It really is. It's like, I'm not a body, but I'm just controlling it. You know, there's a power to understanding what that means. It's empowering, because by choosing body, by choosing to, I am a body, we are disempowering ourselves.
You know, there's a line in here that says something about if we're afraid to heal with our mind, which is kind of what I just heard you saying. I'm not the body. I'm moving the body. If we're afraid to heal with the mind, then we need to work on a different level, I guess. But to not be afraid to heal with the mind, woo! To realize there's only one error.
Yeah.
To know that, where is that thing that's in italics?
Sole responsibility.
Yeah, that one.
Miracle worker is to accept the atonement for herself.
Right, that. Right there. Like, without fear, just like, oh, okay. Huh.
That's it.
That's it.
No more to say.
Mm-hmm.
And check, hey, we're still here now. Would you believe it? After all this time. You know, the more I sit with this, like the more like the statements that always apply, I think are just the most powerful. Like Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. But we don't even need to say, I think, I am. Yes, that is always true. Every time that we say that I am, it is always true. And like the typical view of that is that it's not saying anything, but it's saying everything. It's also
It's like when we were laughing the other day about little kids. Like if I walked up to my granddaughter and said, well, you're not, like you're not anything. But she'd say, well, I am too. Like she knows she is. She knows I am, right? She knows it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to like persuade her I am is true. Just
right.
it's not complicated. I am.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But there's that fear, like, ooh, can I say that? Ooh. Who am I, Karen, to say I am? Like, I am.
Who am I, the mind behind this Karen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, right? But it's that, like, that ego fear thing.
I'm the mind behind this Karen.
Yeah.
Therefore, I am.
I am.
And I don't have to worry about this body being here for me to say I am, because it's just true, regardless of body. I am.
It's just true.
The only reason we don't say that is because we associate with body and we think that we're limited, and we say there's an end. There's an end. There's an end to I am. There's an end to here now.
Yeah, that's
No,
no.
I am.
Well,
Just have it.
what I was talking about is that for me personally, the atonement and the blessing brought such tremendous joy that I didn't even notice that I was a body.
Of course, because you're in the holy instant. That's the holy instant. The
Yeah,
sun's standing.
and that's why I'm so pleased with this last sentence of paragraph 10, that the retroactive and progressive correction is the miracle for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And all those around you.
Yeah,
Your
and
family.
you know, when I'm talking to them on Saturday, I don't need to get into stand-up comedy. Thank you very much.
But it might happen because you're funny. I think.
Well, I appreciate it, but that's the last thing on my mind, because I've heard a lot of very, very funny people and I aspire to be like them. But this time now, the intention is to be the miracle worker, starting with me.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Shabana.
Thank you. That's what I really appreciate, because this book showed up in the mail miraculously.
Yes, it does. It does. It does. And Shabana, like, for instance, I don't think your intention with this meeting is to be funny, but you are, because that's naturally what you are. So you don't have to make that your intention. It's just going to naturally extend from yourself.
Yeah.
So
and it's such a pleasure.
yes.
I'm very grateful for that, because it's so sincere, and I will miss everyone next week.
We'll still be here. We'll be here
Yes,
now.
so make sure you post the recording, Tim.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Where are you posting the recording?
They're in Community Circle. They're actually a YouTube playlist also.
Oh, they're in Community Circle. I need to go hang out in Community Circle.
Yeah, it's kind of a mess, to be honest, at this point.
Oh,
Very
okay.
old platform, but they're on there. They're also on YouTube.
Okay, cool.
So is this on YouTube as well?
Yes, they're a playlist. It may just be on Humanities Team's channel. I think I made them public, so yeah. So we are still here now, and next week. Now we see this text is so rich. It's so rich. It's just, we've only covered like 26 pages, is it? Not even. We skipped over a lot of this first chapter. Each page is just so, it's just truth. It contains all of truth. Each sentence, really, well, most sentences. Out of all the texts that exist, this is, I'd say, like one of the most in spirit text, where you can just go to a random sentence and pick it and say, wow, that's just an incredible truth right there. Like 95% of the sentences are just have that power. So
we didn't even talk about charity. I mean, that whole thing, that's like redefining charity for me. So beautiful.
We didn't talk about magic in terms of physical ailments, physical medicines. Now, we touched upon that in a previous week. But
There's so much.
Well,
it's like you said earlier on, you know, it's like we come together and we meet and we discuss, but this is really to be studied.
Yes. Yeah.
There's so much here to be read, reread.
Because it's a reframing of how we see things,
Yeah.
how we perceive, and it's that subconscious level where, you know, growing up or however we're experiencing things, we read things over and over and over again. We're exposed to these images on media, images, these advertisements, and that's just etched within us. So when we reread, really, every page is saying the same thing. It really is. But like, it's just another way of saying it. It's the next page says the same thing in a different way, the same thing in a different way. So we're just really installing this thought process in our head by studying. And these discussions are incredibly helpful. It's our way of sharing what we have come to understand. But I think it's a compliment to our own, you know, process within the text.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna really try to make next week, because I so enjoy being here.
Yes. Your presence is enjoyed.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
And thank you for being here again, Shabana.
What are we reading for next week?
We're here. This is every week at the same time.
Oh no, what are we reading? And what's the next?
Very next section. So it's section A. It's like a subtext of 5.
Oh, okay.
Special principles of miracle workers.
Okay.
So yeah, we're just going right in order, Nadia, because it's just the order it was written.
Sure.
So,
Sounds good.
and there's just even these little segments that we make gloss over on our own reading through.
Mm-hmm.
Nadia, what part of the world are you in?
Massachusetts.
Aha.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Where's everyone else from?
I'm in Las Vegas.
Oh.
Desert.
I'm in Eugene, Oregon.
Oh.
And Shabana's in
Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Canada. That's great.
And Terry, is she in Canada also?
She's in Toronto, Ontario, which is 2 hours time difference.
Okay.
You guys feel much closer, I tell you that.
Yes, exactly.
You really, really do.
There's no distance in here now.
No.
Yeah.
We're here.
Mm-hmm.
And
So true.
just that there's no distance. There's no size. There's no bigger. There's no reaching more. There's no more people. We'll have peace when we reach this. No, we're here. Peace now.
Mm-hmm.
No size. No distance. No time. Here. Size 0. The greatest peace. There's only one peace. Peace can only be experienced fully here.
Yeah.
Nothing in between. And so I think we're all here. We're all here now. I appreciate everyone here.
Me too.
Me too.
Yes.
And so that may wrap up this week. Next week is Special Principles of Miracle Workers, an extension of this. And, you know, we should have like a little like chat thing, Skype, or what is it? We can like just have a thread, a message thread.
Oh, yeah. Do you do Skype, Nadia and Shabana? Do you use Skype?
I think I can.
There may be. Are we all on Facebook?
Or you could set up, yeah, I'm on Facebook. Set up a little private chat or group somewhere.
Yeah, just a message thread.
Oh, yeah.
I love that idea, because then through the week we could just like drop little notes to each other, throw a question into the mix.
It's true. I mean, I bother Tim all the time.
No, really, I get bothered more by the notifications to bother you. I
Okay.
get those too. Please message Nadia. I get that. I have to leave Nadia alone. She's on her.
Oh, it's so funny with Facebook, because I got these like birthday greetings and like generic Facebook video thingies, like from 2 or 3 people, because Facebook would say, oh, do you want to wish Karen a happy birthday? I do. Do you want to send her a little video? Oh yeah, let's do that too. Right? So funny. So I hear from these people once a year, like, oh yeah, I used to know you. Such a funny thing, notifications of all kinds.
It really is.
It's a very personalized, generic post.
It's so true.
And it was beautiful. I was happy to hear from them.
It's so true.
My dear cousin, once a year, you know, oh, hi.
Time.
Actually, I've quit Facebook, so Skype would probably be better for me if that's all right.
I'll set something up. I'll send a message to all of us. I don't know if it'll be through a web page or something.
Okay, that would be good because I'm afraid to get back on Facebook.
Okay.
For the same reason that Karen was just, saying that.
Yeah.
It's a funny place, indeed.
It's called Fake Book.
Fake book. Yeah.
Fake.
No judgment.
Yeah, that's right. It's neutral.
Thank you, Nadia.
Of course.
But it's just that I was getting sucked into stuff that I really don't need to know.
Sure.
It's another universe for sure. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you guys. Thank you.
Well, I got a lot out of tonight. This was like unexpected. Thank you for inviting me. Really, just out of nowhere. And I was like, yes.
Yeah, well, Karen was not supposed to show up tonight, so I was like, I'll message Nadia, see if she wants to come. Great,
Yes.
we got another.
This is a treat. No, thank you so much for thinking of me.
Thank you for
brother.
joining.
Yeah.
Thank you, sister.
Yeah. I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So, okay.
See you soon. Have a good night over at this side of the world.
We're all here. God
We're
bless.
all here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.